Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the newsroom. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. U.S. Central Command announces a third round of strikes on Iran this week after accusing it of attacking a Cyprus-flagged container ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media has reported explosions in the port cities of Bandar Abbas, Sirik, Chabahar, Bandar Adir, and Asaluye. The bombings come after Iran's IRGC declared the Strait of Hormuz temporarily closed and said it had fired a warning shot at a ship attempting to transit through what it called an unapproved route. Reports indicate interceptions in the sky above Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain. While Qatar is a key mediator between Washington and Tehran, local residents have received messages on their phones urging them to remain in their homes and safe places. Taiwan's fire department has said that 134 people had been injured, mainly falling off of motorbikes, slipping, or being struck by objects. It has reported that no deaths, while the Transport Ministry also said 137 international flights had been cancelled for today, along with 62 domestic flights. 5 people were injured and 2 were pronounced dead following an active shooter incident in Toronto. The suspects remain at large for now as investigations continue. South Korea has issued its first ever emergency heat wave alert under a new warning system introduced this year, advising people to halt outdoor activities amid soaring temperatures. Police say a white 28-year-old man has been arrested in South Yorkshire on suspicion of the murder of Anne Whitcomb, a former Conservative minister turned Reform UK spokesperson, was found with serious injuries at her home in Devon on Thursday. Argentina's Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez scored deep in extra time to secure a dramatic 3-1 quarter-final win over 10-man Switzerland. Now, this result sets up a heavyweight last 4 clash against England in Atlanta next week. Now, we start this hour with West Asia. A sweeping and dangerous military escalation has thrust the entire lower Gulf into multi-theater conflict, following U.S. Central Command's third massive wave of mainland precision strikes this week, which hit 140 Iranian missile drone and radar sites. Tehran has launched an expansive retaliatory barrage against American allied nations. In the United Arab Emirates, the Defense Ministry confirms Patriot and THAAD interceptors are actively engaging incoming ballistic missiles and drones launched directly from Iran. Just up the coast, nationwide air raid sirens have been blaring across Bahrain, home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, while thunderous explosions in Doha prompted the Qatari government to push emergency shelter alerts directly to civilian mobile phones, with the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed by Iran. Following their prior attack on commercial container ship, global energy corridors are facing an unprecedented choke point crisis. The Pentagon warns that U.S. forces remain heavily postured to respond as the entire region braces for secondary waves. Now we welcome Rema Hans. She joins us live from the newsroom. Thank you very much, Rema, for joining us. Rema, as escalations continue to deteriorate the situation in Middle East with this latest escalation, what more can you tell us about this?
Asma, I would like to remind you that this is coming in amidst a 60-day ceasefire which was agreed upon by both United States and Iran when the situations in the region had become extremely fragile and when both the countries were exchanging strikes on a daily basis. There was a 60-day ceasefire which was agreed upon. And then recently there was also an MOU which was signed between both the countries. And now what we are seeing is that Iran and United States has somehow made it back to the what I would like to put it as a starting point in the ceasefire negotiations, because the latest strikes of course completely diminish the purpose of having a ceasefire in place or having a MOU which was agreed upon by both the countries, right? So now what we are looking at it as this the fresh escalation that's also being seen as the third wave of strikes by the United States, or the retaliatory strikes by Iran, as now a resumption of strikes or the war between the Iran and the United States. And as we have seen in the recent days, when the holy period of late leader Ali Khamenei was underway, there was complete calm in the region. There were of course still comments about how the negotiations will go further, but right after the conclusion of Khamenei's burial, now what we are seeing is a new escalation in the war. And of course, as Strait of Hormuz has always been the key or the focus area of the negotiations between both the regions, between both the countries, now that has also has made it back as the point of contention. And this of course puts all the countries into at a point where everyone's concerned about whether there will again be a global impact in terms of the economy of the country, because as we know, Strait of Hormuz is responsible for about 1/5 of the global shipping, and this just does not impact the nations like United States, Russia, Ukraine, but it has a global impact on regions like India, Japan and China, which also happens to have rather close ties with Iran. However, this latest escalation is indicating towards a major war that will perhaps unfold. And this also the latest strikes also comes right after Mojtaba Khamenei made his first public address after his father's burial, that now what they are aiming at is a clear course of vengeance or revenge. So there was no mention of any peace deal or negotiations that they are indicating at, right? So what can be expected in the next upcoming days is that the allies will play a very key role in the negotiations between the two countries, in convincing the two countries to come back to the negotiating table and find a common ground into the war. However, from the looks of it, Iran and United States right now are only going to go head on if there's a further escalation from even one side. Lastly, I would like to mention that Arakchi, the Iranian foreign minister, was recently in Oman after the proposal was made by Oman to de-escalate the war between the Iran and the United States, keeping the Strait of Hormuz at the center focus, and discussed an alternative route for the shipping of these of the commercial vessels which pass through the Strait of Hormuz. So since like I mentioned, Strait of Hormuz is one key pawn for the countries to discuss their further point of agreements. If Oman's proposal is accepted or discussed with the United States, where we could still see that in the upcoming days that United States might not retaliate against Iran. Over to you, Asuma.
Thank you very much, Rema, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we move the focus on to Europe. Ukraine is facing a devastating wave of Russian missile and drone attacks that has left at least 8 people dead and dozens wounded across the country. Officials report that guided aerial bombs struck a crowded bus stop in Sumy, which has killed 5 people, while additional strikes in Odessa and Zaporizhzhia claimed more lives. In Kyiv, an overnight assault involving ballistic missiles wounded 12 people, with authorities noting that some impacts occurred even before air raid alerts could be issued. while President Volodymyr Zelensky has described the ongoing bombardment as an act of terror and announced a major restructuring of Ukraine's diplomatic efforts, has emphasized that Western allies must accelerate the delivery of promised military aid, specifically urging the United States to swiftly finalize a licensing agreement that would allow Ukraine to produce its own Patriot interceptor missiles. Current shortages has left Kyiv's defenses struggling to counter high-speed ballistic threats. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone forces are stepping up long-range operations, reporting hits in dozens of Russian fuel tankers and energy facilities in the Sea of Azov. As the conflict intensifies, U.S. senators have also agreed to advance new legislation aimed at expanding sanctions of buyers of Russian oil and gas to further pressure Moscow's war funding. Let's listen in.
Сьогодні росіяни завдали удару балістикою по Україні. Основна мішень була Київ. Був страшний удар російських бомб по Сумах, ракетний удар по місту Одеса. Мої співчуття усім рідним та близьким загиблих. Увесь день шахеди та інші удари, інші ударні дрони по Харківщині, по нашій Дніпровщині, громадам Сумської області, Донеччини, Херсонщини, Запоріжжя. Між оголошенням пакету підтримки для України і реалізацією не мають проходити тижні. Це відповідальність усіх в державі, хто займається дипломатичною передусім роботою. Українським воїнам потрібно більше засобів, більше можливостей, щоб захищати життя, щоб захищати людей від Росії.
Now we welcome back my colleague Rema Hans. She joins us live from the newsroom. Thank you very much, Rema, for staying with us. Now moving the focus onto Europe, what more can you tell us about this?
Russia-Ukraine war, as you can see, is now escalating. It's going into its 4th year on record, and there is no United States was earlier being seen as the key negotiator, key mediator in the war between Russia and Ukraine, but from the looks of it, it has not been able to achieve any breakthrough in the negotiations between the two countries. And if you look at the latest array of strikes, Ukraine is constantly targeting the infrastructure of Russian energy sector, or be it their ports. Ukraine is constantly targeting its infrastructure, trying to weaken the war of Russia against Ukraine, while Russia is constantly targeting the residential areas or the civilian areas of Ukraine, making it difficult for Ukraine to resist its war against Russia. So Russia and Ukraine has come to a point in their conflict where there is no room for negotiations that is that's been opened so far. There has been strikes that we are reporting every day on a daily basis, despite of reports of the United States President Donald Trump having spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and has mentioned that the peace between the two countries is closer than it is being seen as, which doesn't seem to be the reality from considering the amount of strikes that have taken place. And he had also earlier met the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the NATO summit, indicating that this war will perhaps very soon come to an end, and there will be common ground for both the countries to have a peace agreement. But in the near future, considering there is the constant resistance from Russia for the peace talks, it is not expected to happen anytime soon. And there were also earlier reports over 2 days ago that very close allies or advisors of Putin had mentioned that Putin is in fact looking to escalate the war against Ukraine. And this is because Putin is now expecting to expand its capture, its hold of Ukraine to even Donbas region, which happens to be a very key area in the map and a crucial region for Russia to capture in Ukraine. So Putin is right now, as per the reports, is looking to escalate the war and to have a complete control, as it was mentioned when the war first began, that unless and until Russia has control over the key regions as it claims to be part of Russia, there won't be any de-escalation in the war. And United States, which was being seen as I mentioned, a key mediator, is now coming off to be slightly irrelevant in the war, because despite several meetings, despite several negotiations, there's been no sign of peace between the two countries, while Zelensky continues to urge for more weaponry, more arms, and more support from its allies. And even at the NATO summit, there was the main focus of the discussion was how to support Ukraine in its war against Russia. However, I would also like to mention that there are reports that for Russia to take control of a region like Donbass, which is vast and is under major Ukraine hold or military assistance, there is going to be Russia is going to require a strong draft of fighting engagement to capture the region. So right now, as of now, Ukraine is dealing with the infrastructural damage, or say lack of armed forces, but Russia, on the other hand, is also struggling with the oil shortage that we have seen in the past couple of months, that Russia is struggling to procure enough oil for its citizens and for export, and its for their deals, and even for their war for that matter. They will require a lot of oil that they are in shortage of, and not to mention so they don't have enough soldiers to fight the war. So these are some of the constraints that both the countries will face if they continue to go head on and continue to stand their ground against each other instead of going towards a peace negotiation. Over to you, Asima.
Thank you very much, Rama, for sharing that insight. Now we have a breaking news. Iranian state media has broadcasted an official announcement from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps confirming a significant expansion of military operations in the Persian Gulf. According to a statement carried by state television, the IRGC has struck a second commercial vessel inside the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian military officials claim the unidentified ship was targeted after allegedly violating maritime regulations within the waterway, which the regime formally declared closed to international shipping earlier today. The escalation has extended past the immediate maritime choke point. In the same communique, the Revolutionary Guards have announced they launched a targeted ballistic missile strike against the strategic United States military installation in Qatar. While the IRGC specifically claims to have hit the Al Udeid air base, alleging the strike successfully compromised an American fighter jet maintenance center and a primary command and control facility. Additional claims from Tehran indicate threat vectors were simultaneously directed at Allied military installations inside Jordan and Kuwait. This rapidly developing series of regional counterstrikes directly follows a heavy wave of American precision airstrikes on mainland Iran, authorized by the Pentagon on Saturday night. While U.S. Central Command has not yet released a formalized damage assessment regarding the regional bases, coalition forces across the Gulf have moved to maximum security postures as the conflict actively spreads outside the initial theater of operations. Now we move on to U.S. Prominent U.S. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna has revealed that he and his delegation were stopped and forcibly detained for roughly 90 minutes by armed Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank, Palestine. California's lawmaker was conducting a fact-finding mission in the southern West Bank hamlet of Khir Bet Zanuta when his vehicle was surrounded by masked men brandishing American-made M4 rifles. Rouhani was leveling sharp criticism at the Israeli Defense Forces, stating that when soldiers arrived at the scene, they openly sided with the settlers, interacted with them in a friendly manner, and prolonged the delegation's detention. The lawmaker and his team, including aide Cameron Kasky, were only allowed to proceed after making emergency phone calls to the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem and the Israeli police. While the IDF has released a statement denying any active role in blocking the road and claiming troops acted to disperse the civilians, Rouhani has categorized the encounter as a direct reflection of the systematic impunity and lack of accountability defining the occupation of Palestine. Let's listen in.
I've been to Israel before. We've met with Israeli officials. We've gone to Ramallah, met with the President Abbas. But I've never really gotten to meet Palestinians and seen the occupation from the eyes of Palestinians. And it was important to me to have an uncurated, extensive look at the human toll of occupation. I'm certainly probably the first American politician who's been detained by the IDF and Israeli settlers. I mean, we were at a village that Israeli settlers had destroyed. They had destroyed the school, they had destroyed that village, and we were just looking at it. And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road. And then they call the IDF, and the IDF is on their side, not on the side of the American.
Now we move on to Asia. Vietnamese Prime Minister Lê Minh Hung has ordered a comprehensive investigation after a speedboat capsized off of Phu Quoc Island, killing 15 Indian tourists yesterday. The Prime Minister has assured that strict action will be taken against those responsible for the deadly incident. As per reports, the disaster occurred when a speedboat ferrying 32 Indian tourists, 3 crew members and a local guide overturned just 400 meters from the shore. Authorities say the vessel encountered sudden strong winds while transiting from Mae Rut Nguoi Island to An Thoi International Port. An immediate rescue operation has succeeded in pulling all 36 people from the water, while 21 people have survived the capsizing, but 15 Indian nationals were confirmed dead at the scene. The Embassy of India in Vietnam has located and secured an authorized agency to begin the repatriation of the mortal remains. Officials are contacting bereaved families today to obtain the necessary transportation authorizations. Of the deceased, 10 victims have been transferred to Cho Ray Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City, while the remaining 5 are at Kian Giang General Hospital for formal identification procedures. The survivors are scheduled to return home to India today. One injured tourist, identified as Jel Kishore, remains hospitalized in Vietnam but is reported to be recovering steadily. Now we move on to our FIFA news. Defending world champions Argentina have advanced to the semi-finals of the 2026 FIFA World Cup following a 3-1 victory over Switzerland in grueling extra time quarterfinal at Kansas City Stadium. The South Americans opened the scoring early in the 10th minute when Alexis Marc Allister converted a cross from Lionel Messi. Argentina maintained control until the 67th minute when Swiss winger Dan Ndoye finished a quick counter-attack to equalize. The match shifted dramatically in the 72nd minute when Switzerland was reduced to 10 men after forward Breel Embolo received a second yellow card for simulation following a VAR review. Despite the numerical disadvantage, the Swiss defense held firm through the end of regulation time. The deadlock was finally broken in the 112th minute of extra time by Julian Alvarez, who struck a long-range effort into the top corner. Lautaro Martinez then added a third goal on a fast break in the final minute of play to seal the victory. Argentina now moves on to face England in the semi-final round. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
The world's biggest sporting spectacular.